Hello there and welcome to a Free Motion Madness. So in the past we've taken your quilt tops and given you ideas for how to quilt your designs, but from here on out what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through why I chose to do the designs that I did on the quilts that I'm working on. This is Melinda's quilt. Her sister made it for her, and her sister is a modern quilter, and because Anne is a modern quilter, Melinda wanted this wall hanging that her sister made for her to be very modern, to have clean, crisp lines and not be muddied up. She doesn't like feathers or anything like that, so I tried to choose designs that would complement Melinda's taste and Anne's taste. And so I want to show you how I kind of decide what I'm going to quilt on a quilt. So first what I do is I take a photo of the quilt, and I'm using, this is my Microsoft OneNote tablet. You can use really any tablet. You can get an off-market stylus for any tablet that you have, but my OneNote comes with a stylus. And so I use the Microsoft OneNote application. I'm sorry, this is a Surface Pro tablet. This is a Microsoft OneNote application, and so I upload the picture to it, and then I kind of just come in here and I doodle different designs and ideas for how I want to quilt the quilt. I thought for sure in the yellow areas I was going to do a digital design, but because Melinda didn't like feathers, there's almost nothing that comes preloaded in my computer to do digital designs, so I didn't want to waste my time with it. I decided I would figure out what to make. So I noticed that I have a couple different elements to this quilt. I've got a star block. I've got, I don't know what this block would be called, but I separated this block into two separate sections. I gave myself an X and I gave myself a diamond on point. And all of those nest together to make your star, your diamond, and your X. And so knowing that those were the elements and the setting triangles that I would have to figure out how to quilt, I kind of just messed around and doodled a couple different designs. I thought for sure I was going to do kind of like a point-to-point kind of thing because it travels easy, and it's a lot of quilting, but it would have separated this whole area into 4 different blocks, and I just moved that on accident. And so if I was doing this for 3 different blocks, it's 4 for the one in the middle, but if I was doing this in 3 different blocks, I would have ended up having more quilting and more traveling and more backtracking, which could lead to more errors and more thread buildup, and I didn't want to deal with that. So I was trying to think of other ideas for how to accent that space. So for the star, I thought for sure I was going to make it a big ol' M from top to bottom and fill it with pebbles and do the back and forth arrows. So we're keeping with the same kind of designs, echoes, arrows, pebbles, and back and forth. And then I thought for sure for this setting diamond, right, the diamond on point, I was going to work with pebbles and arrows and some overlapping, it's not like a crosshatch, but just kind of an overlapping design in the gold. And for the X, I wanted to accentuate the X just by doing some simple, I guess, echo designs out and then filling every other one to create some dimension. And so that was my original plan. Okay, so that's what I got started with. When I then started actually quilting, that plan kind of changed. When I started working on the X design, it looked really boring. So instead of filling with the back and forth every other one, I decided to add other elements like this echo on various portions. I did like a little, I don't know what you would call that, like a little border, 1/4 inch stitched line just to kind of differentiate it. And what ended up happening by adding those lines, it looks like an inset secondary design of like a picture frame kind of block sitting behind these set diamonds on point. So that was kind of a cool element that just kind of happened based on the evolving of my quilting. And then also right over here in this setting diamond, this diamond on point, I was going to do arrows and accent all of these little blocks with arrows and then do this kind of crossover design in here, but again, it felt like a lot of backtracking, a lot of stitching in the ditch, a lot of things I just didn't feel like doing, and I didn't feel like it was going to give the quilt that extra little bit that I wanted. So what I ended up doing was a tapered from small to big, and then it framed kind of this outer edge, and then it tapered small, which you can't really see too well with the piecing, but it still kind of gives that arrow look, but it also accentuates an X here, so that I'm playing with kind of the X design here and the X design here, even though it all ends up kind of looking like a frame because of this design here that overlaps, gives you the same width dimension. And then in this blue, I just did a simple back and forth arrow design because it was an easier travel. And I've got so much going on in all these other areas, you really need somewhere for your eye to rest. So I didn't want to over quilt this area. I also decided not to quilt this dark blue area because, again, there's a lot going on with the quilt and your eye really just needs a place to rest. Now, I could have quilted something in here that was like a dark blue, and you really wouldn't have seen a lot of the design because of how dark it is, but I just chose not to quilt it at all. In the star design here, I was going to do that big ol' M design, right? And then put pebbles in here. But again, with Melinda wanting this piece to play into Anne being a modern quilter, I kept it simple with some straight lines. I went ahead and did the arrow design in the tips just to accentuate the star. And then I kept it very clean cut and simple there. For the edges, as we get out to the edge into the setting triangles, I wanted to not create any extra confusion. I didn't want to have to work on doing half of this block here, half of this block here, and then doing the same kind of triangle designs here as these would be. Instead, I just wanted to give something simple that would directionally point your eye to the middle of the quilt. So these diamonds all point down, and these all point into the stars. And then lastly, Melinda really wanted me to use a dark blue thread on these yellow setting triangles, which is kind of terrifying because you will see every little blip and blurb and mistake that you make. But once it's hanging on the wall and not right 6 inches from your face, you probably won't see as much. So my design choices for this were just really to keep it simple. I didn't want to muddy it up / have a lot of backtracking that could look really terrible if I didn't quite hit my lines just right. And so what I ended up doing was I divided this triangle into 4 sections. So I divided it here and here, and then I also divided it the same. So I divided it in half and then in half again. And I used that to take my arch ruler and do lines, and then I filled, and then I did some lines, and I did an echo, and then I used my straight ruler to get in here and do these lines as well. Why I decided to not do like just a straight line design down, I don't know. It just felt like it made more sense to kind of go with the arrow theme and kind of push that design out towards the edge. So, and I really like the kind of secondary look of kind of a faux, it's not quite a square, but it kind of looks like a rounded square. So it gives a little more dimension, because the one thing I felt that this quilt needed was a little bit more of curvy designs. But again, with it being modern, I wanted to minimize the amount of curves and stuff that I was using. So I'm really pleased with how it came out. And I hope that some of these ideas and reasons why I decided to quilt the quilt the way that I quilted it really help you in making your decisions going forward. So thanks for joining me for Free Motion Madness, and look for more of these coming soon as I crank out some more of those custom quilts. Take care and happy quilting.